Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The rain fell in soft sheets over Philadelphia, painting the cobblestone paths of Rittenhouse Square in a glossy sheen. Streetlights cast golden pools across the park, their glow-ming, glasnost-like reflections dancing in the puddles. In the heart of the square, under a dripping oak tree, two figures stood close, the world around them fading into a blur of mist and city hum. Ivy Walker, 26, her denim jacket soaked through, stood with her arms crossed, her dark brown eyes sharp and unyielding. Water clung to her smooth ebony skin, catching the light like tiny stars. Her natural curls, tied high in a messy bun, glistened with raindrops. Across from her was Preston Caldwell, 28. Usually the picture of polished arrogance in tailored suits, but tonight stripped down to a plain gray t-shirt and jeans, his blonde hair plastered to his forehead. The rain had washed away his usual swagger, leaving him looking almost human. Ivy, Preston said, his voice low, barely rising above the patter of rain. He stepped closer, his green eyes searching hers. I've done a lot of dumb things to get your attention. Half of them were probably the worst ideas I've ever had. He gave a nervous laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. But this is real. You're the only person who's ever made me want to be better. Ivy's lips twitched a half smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She tilted her head, studying him. Her soaked jacket hugged her athletic frame, accentuating the strength in her shoulders, the curve of her hips. She was beautiful, not in the polished, Instagram-filtered way Preston was used to, but in a raw, unapologetic way that hit him like a punch to the chest. Words are cheap. Preston, she said, her Philly accent sharp but warm, like a bite of a fresh cheesesteak. You want to prove something? Show me. 'Cause I'm not some prize you win with a smooth line. Preston swallowed hard, his heart thudding. He stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from her, despite the chill. The air between them crackled heavy with unspoken things. He reached for her hand, his fingers brushing hers, tentative, like he was afraid she'd pull away. I'm trying, Ivy. I swear I'm... She didn't move, but her eyes softened just a fraction. The rain slowed to a drizzle, and for a moment it was just them. Two people caught in a city that never stopped moving. Preston leaned in his breath, warm against her cheek, his lips hovering inches from hers. The world held its breath, but Ivy pressed a hand to his chest, stopping him. Not yet, she said, her voice firm, but not unkind. You gotta earn it, millionaire. She stepped back, her sneakers splashing in a puddle, and shot him a look that was equal parts challenge and promise. Don't screw this up. Preston watched her walk away, her silhouette fading into the misty glow of the park. His chest ached, not from the cold, but from something deeper, something he wasn't sure he knew how to name. One thing was clear. Ivy Walker was unlike anyone he'd ever met, and he'd move mountains to prove he was worthy of her, or at least he'd try not to crash and burn in the process. 3 months earlier, the air was thick with tension in the grand hall of Thornhill Manor, a sprawling estate tucked in the rolling hills just outside Philadelphia. The room glittered with old-money opulence. Marble floors polished to a mirror shine, crystal chandeliers dripping light like liquid diamonds, and walls lined with oil paintings of stern-faced Thornhills from centuries past. The scent of expensive cologne and perfume hung heavy, mingling with the faint tang of champagne bubbling in flutes. It was the kind of place where you could feel the weight of wealth in every step, every glance. Ivy Walker didn't belong here. At least that's what everyone in the room seemed to think. She stood near the back, her worn Converse sneakers silent against the marble, her faded jeans and Nina Simone t-shirt. a stark contrast to the sea of silk dresses and tailored suits around her. At 26, Ivy was used to standing out, growing up in North Philly, where the streets smelled of fried onions from food trucks, and the bass of hip-hop thumped from corner stores had toughened her skin. But this was a different kind of battlefield. The room buzzed with whispers, sharp and cutting, as the heirs of Logan Thornhill, the late tech billionaire who'd built an empire from nothing, waited for the reading of his will. Marissa Reed, 30, stood near the fireplace, her red dress clinging to her like a second skin. Her platinum blonde hair swept into an elegant updo. She leaned toward her friend Clara Simmons, a 22-year-old TikTok star with 1 million followers and a penchant for drama, who let the delivery girl in. Marissa muttered, her voice dripping with disdain. She flicked her eyes toward Ivy, her lips curling into a smirk. Clara, her phone already out, snapped a quick photo of Ivy, her fingers flying over the screen as she posted to TikTok. "Check this," she giggled, showing Marissa the caption. "Thrift store chic at a billionaire's will reading, hired Philly trash." The post was live in seconds, racking up likes faster than Clara could refresh. Across the room, Preston Caldwell lounged against a wall, a glass of champagne dangling from his fingers. At 28, he was the golden boy of Philly's tech scene, his startup raking in millions with AI software nobody fully understood, least of all him. His blonde hair was artfully tousled, his Armani suit cut to perfection, and his green eyes sparkled with the kind of confidence that came from never hearing the word no. He caught sight of Ivy and raised an eyebrow, his lips twitching into a smirk. "Yo, sweetheart," he called loud enough for heads to turn. "This ain't a charity event. You lost or something?" The room tittered, a ripple of laughter spreading like wildfire. Ivy didn't flinch. She turned to face Preston. Her arms crossed, her expression cool as the marble under her feet. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," she said, her voice steady, her Philly accent giving the words a slight edge. "You might want to check your invite, though. Looks like you're here for the free booze." A few gasps punctuated the air, followed by stifled chuckles. Preston's smirk faltered, but only for a second. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone like her, someone who didn't bow to his charm or his bank account. He opened his mouth to fire back, but something in Ivy's eyes stopped him. They were dark, deep, and unflinching, like they could see right through his polished exterior to the mess underneath. For the first time in a long while, Preston felt a flicker of unease and something else. Curiosity. Before he could say anything, the heavy oak doors at the far end of the hall creaked open, and Arthur Grayson Logan Thornhill's lawyer stepped inside. The man was in his 60s, his silver hair slicked back, his pinstripe suit as crisp as the leather briefcase in his hand. The room fell silent, the air thickening with anticipation. Everyone knew what was coming. The reading of Logan's will, the moment that would carve up his $90 billion empire like a Thanksgiving turkey. Grayson set his briefcase on the long ebony table at the center of the room, his movements slow and deliberate like a conductor about to strike the first note. He adjusted his glasses, his sharp blue eyes sweeping over the crowd. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice deep and resonant, filling the cavernous space. "We are gathered here to execute the final wishes of Mr. Logan Alexander Thornhill as outlined in his notarized will." Marissa straightened her manicured nails, tapping her champagne flute. Clara pocketed her phone, her eyes glinting with greed. Preston took a sip of his drink, his posture casual, but his grip on the glass tightened. Everyone in the room was here for one thing, a piece of the Thornhill fortune, real estate, tech, patents, offshore accounts. The stakes were astronomical. Grayson opened his briefcase and withdrew a sealed envelope, its red wax stamp bearing the Thornhill crest. He sliced through the seal with a small silver knife, the faint scrape echoing like a gunshot in the silence. The crowd leaned forward, breaths held as he unfolded the document inside Mr. Thornhill's estate. Grayson read his tone, measured, including all assets, properties, shares, and financial holdings, with an estimated value of $90 billion, is to be transferred in its entirety to one individual. A murmur rippled through the room. One individual. That wasn't how these things worked. Billionaires spread the wealth, didn't they? Kept the family happy, the partners quiet. Marissa's smile tightened. Clara's eyes widened and Preston's jaw clenched. He'd been counting on a hefty chunk enough to fund his next startup, maybe buy that yacht he'd been eyeing. Grayson paused, letting the tension build, then continued. The sole heir to Mr. Logan Thornhill's estate is his lawful daughter, Ivy Walker. The room froze. Glasses clinked as hands trembled. A woman near the front dropped her purse, the contents spilling across the floor. Marissa's face drained of color, her mouth opening in a silent scream. "What?" she shrieked, her voice piercing the stunned silence. "Her. That nobody." Clara's phone slipped from her fingers, clattering to the marble. "No way," she whispered, her eyes darting to Ivy. "She's his daughter." Preston choked on his champagne, coughing as he stared at Ivy. His mind raced, replaying her cool confidence, her sharp comeback. She hadn't just wandered into this room by mistake. She was a Thornhill, a billionaire, and she'd played them all like a pro. Ivy stood motionless, her expression unreadable. The whispers started again, louder now, a mix of shock and outrage. "She's a fraud," someone hissed. "Logan didn't have a kid," another voice snapped. Marissa stormed forward, her heels clicking like gunfire. "This is a scam. She's probably some gold digger he met at a dive bar." Grayson raised a hand, silencing the room. "The will is legally binding, signed and notarized 3 years ago," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Miss Walker's paternity has been verified through DNA testing conducted at Mr. Thornhill's request. There is no dispute." The air turned electric, charged with disbelief and fury. Ivy finally moved, stepping forward, her sneakers soft against the marble. Every eye in the room followed her, some with hatred, others with grudging curiosity. She stopped near Grayson, her posture relaxed, but her eyes blazing. "Thanks for the warm welcome, y'all," she said, her voice dry as a summer sidewalk. "Didn't expect a parade, but I figured you'd at least wait for the ink to dry before losing it." A few nervous laughs broke the tension, but Marissa's glare could have melted steel. "You think you can just waltz in here and take everything?" Marissa spat, her hands on her hips. "I've known Logan for years." "You're nobody." Ivy tilted her head unfazed. "Funny thing about nobody," she said. "Turns out I'm the nobody with a $90 billion trust fund. So maybe chill with the attitude." "Yeah." The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Clara scrambled to pick up her phone, already typing furiously, no doubt updating her TikTok with the bombshell. Preston set his glass down, his smirk gone, replaced by something closer to awe. He'd underestimated her big time, and damn if that didn't make her even more intriguing. Grayson cleared his throat, regaining control. "Miss Walker will assume full control of the Thornhill estate, effective immediately. Further details will be provided to her privately." This concludes the reading, as the crowd dissolved into chaos, arguments flaring, phones buzzing. Ivy slipped toward the exit, her faded backpack slung over one shoulder. Preston watched her go, his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with the money he'd just lost. She was a puzzle, a wildfire, a challenge he couldn't resist. And he was Preston, Caldwell. He didn't back down from challenges. He jogged after her, weaving through the crowd, and caught up just as she reached the manor's massive front doors. "Hey, Walker!" he called, his voice echoing in the foyer. Ivy paused, glancing over her shoulder. "What now, millionaire? Need a loan?" He grinned, undeterred. "Just thought I'd say, welcome to the club. You're gonna need a guide in this world. Lucky for you, I'm available." Ivy raised an eyebrow, her lips curving into a sly smile. "Thanks, but I've been navigating worse streets than these since I was a kid. I'll manage." She pushed the door open, stepping into the cool Philly evening, leaving Preston standing there, his ego bruised, but his interest fully ignited. As the doors swung shut, the city's pulse greeted her distant car horns, the faint thump of a bass line from a passing car, the smell of rain and asphalt. Ivy took a deep breath, the weight of her new life settling on her shoulders. She was Logan Thornhill's daughter, a billionaire overnight, and the world was about to find out what she was made of. Whoa, what a start. Ivy's already shaking up Philly's elite, and Preston's got his work cut out for him. What do you think? Can Ivy handle the billionaire life? And will Preston step up or crash and burn? Drop a comment and let us know. If you're loving this story, hit that subscribe button to catch the next chapter. Trust us, you won't want to miss what's coming. The North Philly sun beat down on Girard Avenue, turning the asphalt into a shimmering heat-wave mirage. The street was alive with the rhythm of the city kids dribbling basketballs on a cracked court, the sizzle of cheesesteaks from a food truck, and the thump of a Drake track blasting from a corner store's speakers. Ivy Walker's office, a squat brick building sandwiched between a barber shop and a laundromat, was the heart of her world. The sign above the door read, Walker Community Hub, in bold blue letters, though the paint was peeling at the edges. Inside it was a whirlwind of activity, volunteers sorting canned goods, kids coloring on mismatched tables, and the smell of burnt coffee lingering in the air. Ivy stood at the center of it all, her Nina Simone t-shirt swapped for a plain black tank top that showed off her toned arms. Her jeans were dusted with flour from helping a kid make a PB&J, and her Converse squeaked as she moved between tables handing out juice boxes. At 26, she was a force of nature, part social worker, part big sister, all Philly grit. The news of her $90 billion inheritance hadn't changed her. If anything, it made her double down on her mission to give back to the neighborhood that raised her. Outside, a low rumble cut through the street noise, drawing every eye on the block. A bright yellow Lamborghini screeched to a stop in front of the hub, its engine purring like a smug cat. Heads turned, kids pointed, and an old man on a stoop muttered, "Who's this clown?" The driver's door swung open, and out stepped Preston Caldwell, looking like he'd just walked off a GQ cover. His white linen shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, his sunglasses gleamed, and he carried a bouquet of roses so big it could have doubled as a parade float. A portable LED sign strapped to the car's roof flashed in neon pink Ivy dinner tonight. The kids on the basketball court burst out laughing. "Yo, this dude's extra one," shouted, dribbling his ball with a grin. Ivy, alerted by the commotion, stepped outside, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her eyes narrowed as she took in the scene. Preston, the car, the roses, the ridiculous sign. She crossed her arms, her lips twitching with a mix of amusement and exasperation. "Preston," she said, her voice carrying over the street noise. "You lost or just trying to block traffic?" Preston flashed his trademark grin, the one that usually got him out of trouble or into it. "Neither," he said, striding toward her, the roses bouncing with each step. "I'm here to make an offer. You can't refuse. Dinner best spot in Philly. I'm thinking, Zahav hummus. So good, it'll change your life." He held out the bouquet like it was a peace offering, his green eyes sparkling with confidence. Ivy didn't take the flowers. She tilted her head, studying him like he was a puzzle she hadn't decided to solve. "Nice try, millionaire," she said, her Philly accent giving the words a playful edge. "But these kids need milk more than I need fancy hummus. You want to help? Grab a crate and start unloading." The kids snickered and a few volunteers poked their heads out the door. Curious, Preston's grin faltered, but only for a second. He wasn't used to being shot down, especially not in front of an audience. But something about Ivy's no-nonsense vibe, the way she stood her ground without batting an eye, made him want to try harder. He set the roses on a nearby bench, promptly claimed by a kid who started plucking petals and rolled up his sleeves. "All right, Walker," he said, trying to sound casual. "Let's see what you've got." Inside the hub, the chaos was organized in a North Philly kind of way. Cardboard boxes of canned goods and juice cartons lined the walls, and a chalkboard listed the day's tasks. Sort food, pack lunches, clean tables. Ivy pointed Preston to a stack of crates filled with apples and granola bars. "Those need to go to the tables out back," she said, already turning to help a kid with a spilled juice box. "Don't drop 'em." Preston, who'd never lifted anything heavier than a dumbbell in his air-conditioned gym, hefted a crate and immediately regretted it. The thing was heavier than it looked, and his pristine sneakers skidded on the linoleum floor. He made it 3 steps before the crate tipped, and a cascade of apples hit the ground, rolling under tables like tiny green grenades. The kids roared with laughter, and one yelled, "Yo, rich boy needs a forklift." Ivy spun around, her eyes widening before she burst out laughing. A real laugh, bright and unguarded, that lit up the room. Preston's face burned, but he couldn't help grinning. Okay, he said, holding up his hands. "I'm new at this. Give me a break." "Breaks are for quitters," Ivy shot back, tossing him a rag. "Clean it up, then try again. And watch your step this time." As Preston scrambled to pick up apples, a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked braids and a nurse's scrubs leaned against the doorway, watching the scene with a smirk. Sarah Ellis, Ivy's surrogate aunt and the hub's unofficial morale booster, had known Ivy since she was a kid. She'd been best friends with Ivy's mom, a jazz singer who'd loved Logan Thornhill despite the world's disapproval. Sarah raised an eyebrow at Preston. Well, she said, her voice warm but teasing. "Fancy boy thinks he can charm our Ivy with flowers and a shiny car. Newsflash, kid, she's allergic to show-offs." Preston, still on his knees, chasing an apple, looked up with a mock-offended gasp. "Show off me. I'm all charm, ma'am. Pure, unfiltered charm," Sarah snorted. "Charm don't stack crates. Charm don't feed kids. You want to impress Ivy? Learn to hold a broom first." Ivy, overhearing, grinned, but didn't look up from her work. "Listen to Sarah," she called. "She's got your number." Another figure emerged from the back room, carrying a box of notebooks. Michael Reed, 27, was the hub's resident librarian, a lanky guy with thick glasses and a quiet intensity. His worn cardigan and faded jeans matched the hub's scrappy vibe, but his eyes sharpened when he saw Preston. Michael had been Ivy's friend since high school, always there with a book recommendation or a bad joke to make her smile. He didn't trust Preston, too flashy, too slick. "Ivy," he said, setting the box down. "You need me to handle this guy. Looks like he's more trouble than help." Preston stood, brushing apple juice off his shirt, and shot Michael a look. "Handle me, dude. I'm helping team player right here." Michael adjusted his glasses, unimpressed. "Helping you just turned the floor into an orchard." Ivy stepped between them, her hands on her hips. "All right, chill, both of you, Michael. He's fine. Preston, focus on the crates, not the trash talk." She gave them both a look that said, "Don't test me," then turned back to the kids, leaving the two guys sizing each other up like alley cats. As the afternoon wore on, Preston found a rhythm, sort of. He hauled crates, passed out snacks, and even let a kid draw a mustache on his hand with a marker. The hub was a world away from his usual haunts, Center City penthouses, rooftop bars, tech conferences where he was the star. But there was something about this place, about Ivy, that made him want to stay. She moved through the chaos like she was born for it, joking with the kids, calming a frazzled volunteer, her laughter cutting through the noise like a melody. At one point, Preston caught her eye as she handed a juice box to a shy girl with pigtails. Ivy's smile was soft, unguarded, and it hit him like a freight train. She wasn't just beautiful, She was real in a way he'd never known. His world was all flash and hustle, but hers was purpose, grit, and heart. He wanted to be part of it, even if he had to make a fool of himself to get there. The day's big task was setting up tables for a community lunch out back, a patch of concrete surrounded by chain-link fences and graffiti-covered walls. Ivy directed the volunteers with the precision of a coach, her voice carrying over the chatter. Preston, determined to redeem himself, grabbed a stack of folding chairs and hauled them outside. He was halfway across the lot when his foot caught on a crack and the chairs went flying, clattering to the ground like a bad percussion solo. The kids howled, and even Sarah doubled over, clutching her sides. "Oh, man," Sarah wheezed. "You're a walking disaster, kid." Ivy jogged over her sneakers, crunching on the gravel. She didn't laugh this time, but her eyes sparkled with mischief. "You okay, millionaire?" she asked, offering a hand. Preston took it, his fingers brushing hers, and for a split second, the world narrowed to the warmth of her skin, the strength in her grip. "Yeah," he said, his voice quieter than he meant. "Just, testing gravity. It still works." Ivy pulled him up, her touch lingering a moment longer than necessary. "Gravity's undefeated," she said, smirking. "Keep up or you're gonna lose to a sidewalk next." As they set up the tables together, Preston found himself watching her, how she tucked a loose curl behind her ear, how her laugh made the kids light up. He was in over his head and he knew it, but he wasn't backing down. Not yet. The lunch was a hit. Trays of fried chicken, mac and cheese and collard greens, courtesy of a local diner that donated food every month. The kids dug in their chatter, filling the air, while volunteers like Anna Brooks, a 24-year-old gardener with a sunny smile, kept the vibe light. Anna, who'd been working at Thornhill Manor before joining the hub, had a knack for making everyone laugh. She sidled up to Preston, holding a plate of cornbread. "Yo, rich boy," she said, grinning. "You gonna eat, or just stare at Ivy all day?" Preston choked on his water, earning another round of laughs. "I'm not staring," he protested, but his eyes flicked to Ivy, who was helping a kid cut her chicken. Anna raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "Uh-huh," she said. "Just don't trip over your own ego next time you try to impress her." By the time the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the lot, the lunch was winding down. Preston, sweaty and slightly less pristine than when he'd arrived, felt a strange sense of accomplishment. He'd survived barely. As the volunteers cleaned up, he caught Ivy alone by the back door, stacking empty trays. "Hey," he said, leaning against the wall, trying to muster his usual charm. "So how'd I do, Rookie of the Year, right?" Ivy snorted, setting a tray down. "Rookie of something," she said. "You didn't break anything, so I'll give you a C+. C+. Preston clutched his chest, feigning offense. "I'm at least a B-. I mean, I carried chairs. I bonded with kids. I'm basically a hero." Ivy's lips twitched, but she didn't laugh. "Heroes don't need a Lamborghini to show up," she said, her tone softer now. "You want to be here, Preston. Be real. This place, these people, they're not props for your ego." Her words hit harder than he expected. For once, he didn't have a comeback. He knotted his throat tight. "Got it," he said quietly. I'll do better." Ivy studied him, her eyes searching his face. Then she nodded just once and turned back to her work. It wasn't much, but it was enough a crack in her armor, a chance to prove he wasn't just some spoiled rich kid. As Preston headed back to his car, the LED sign now dark, he felt something shift inside him. Ivy Walker wasn't just a challenge, she was a wake-up call, and he was ready to answer it even if it meant tripping over a few more chairs along the way. The center city's skyline glittered against the twilight, its glass towers reflecting the last rays of a September sun. Inside a cozy coffee shop on Walnut Street, the air smelled of roasted beans and fresh pastries, the soft hum of jazz mingling with the clink of mugs. Ivy Walker sat at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic cup, the steam curling up like a ghost. Her usual confidence was frayed at the edges, her dark brown eyes fixed on the newspaper spread before her. The headlines screamed in bold black letters. Thornhill heir or gold digger questions swirl around Ivy Walker's claim. The article was brutal. It painted Ivy as a schemer who'd somehow conned Logan Thornhill into naming her his heir, questioning her paternity with thinly veiled racism. A North Philly native with no known ties to the Thornhill family, it read. Walker's sudden rise has sparked skepticism among Philadelphia's elite. The words stung like a slap, each one a reminder of the whispers she'd heard growing up. You don't belong. You're not enough. Ivy's jaw tightened, her fingers gripping the mug so hard her knuckles paled. She'd fought tooth and nail to rise above her past poverty, prejudice, the loss of her mom. And now, at 26, with $90 billion in her name, she was still fighting the same battles. Sarah Ellis slid into the seat across from her, her nurse's scrubs wrinkled from a long shift. At 50, Sarah was a rock tough as the North Philly streets, but warm as the Sunday dinners she cooked for the Hub's kids. She'd been Ivy's mom's best friend, the one who'd held Ivy's hand at the funeral when she was 10. Sarah glanced at the newspaper, her lips pursing. "Don't let that trash get to you, baby," she said, her voice low and steady. "They're just mad 'cause a black girl from the block outshined their fancy asses." Ivy managed a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's not just the article, Sarah," she said, her Philly accent thick with frustration. "It's the looks, the whispers. I walk into a room and they see a fraud. They don't care that I'm Logan's daughter. They see my skin, my genes, and they've already made up their minds." Sarah reached across the table, squeezing Ivy's hand. "They're jealous, Ivy. You're a light, and they're just shadows screaming for attention. Your daddy knew you were special. That's why he chose you." Ivy nodded, but the weight in her chest didn't lift. She sipped her coffee, the bitterness mirroring her mood. The shop's windows framed the bustling street outside, suits hurrying to happy hour, street vendors hawking soft pretzels, the distant wail of a siren. Philadelphia was her home, but lately it felt like a city divided, the glittering world of the elite she'd been thrust into and the gritty streets of North Philly that had shaped her. Meanwhile, across town in a sleek office overlooking the Schuylkill River, Preston Caldwell sat in a leather chair, his polished loafers propped on a glass desk. His startup's headquarters was all sharp angles and modern art, a testament to his success at 28. But today, his usual swagger was muted. He stared at his phone where a notification from Clara Simmons' TikTok blared a video of Ivy at the will reading captioned "Billionaire or bust naked Philly fraud." The comments were vicious slurs, memes, accusations that made Preston's stomach turn. He'd laughed at Ivy's expense that day, but now the memory felt sour. The door swung open and Gerald Hayes strode in, his 60-year-old frame clad in a bespoke suit, his silver hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Gerald, Preston's uncle and a ruthless investor, had been a fixture in the Thornhill circle for decades. He carried himself like a man who owned the room, and usually he did. "You've seen the news, I presume," Gerald said, tossing a copy of the Philly Inquirer onto the desk. The same headline glared up at Preston. "Yeah," Preston said, leaning back, trying to keep his tone casual. "People are losing their minds over Ivy. Big surprise." Gerald's eyes narrowed. "This isn't just gossip, Preston. That girl is a threat. $90 billion and she's got it all. We need to act before she consolidates power." Preston shifted his fingers, drumming on the armrest. "Act how? The will's legit. Grayson said the DNA checks out." Gerald smirked, a cold, calculating thing. "Wills can be contested. Evidence can be found. Marissa's already stirring the pot, and I've got people digging into Walker's past. She's got skeletons. I guarantee it. You need to get close to her. gain her trust. If she slips up, we'll be ready. Preston's jaw tightened. He'd never been close to Gerald, but the man had bankrolled his startup's early days, and that debt hung over him like a noose. Still, the idea of betraying Ivy made his skin crawl. He thought of her laugh at the hub, the way she'd pulled him up from the gravel, her hand strong and warm. "I don't know, man," he said, rubbing his neck. "She's not what you think. She's real." Gerald's smile vanished. "Don't go soft on me, Preston. You're a Caldwell. We don't let outsiders take what's ours. Do your part, or you'll be out of the game." The threat lingered as Gerald left the door clicking shut. Preston stared out the window, the river below glinting like a blade. He'd always played the game, charm, hustle, win. But Ivy was rewriting the rules, and he wasn't sure he could keep up. Back in North Philly, the Walker Community Hub was buzzing with preparations for a press conference. Ivy had announced a new initiative, a $50 million fund to rebuild schools and community centers in underserved neighborhoods. The event was set for tomorrow at City Hall, a chance to show the world what she was about. But the rumors were spreading like wildfire, fueled by Marissa Reed's calculated moves. Marissa perched in her Rittenhouse condo, scrolled through her Instagram, her manicured nails tapping the screen. She'd spent years clawing her way into Philly's elite, leveraging her influencer status to rub elbows with the Thornhills. Logan had dismissed her fashion brand pitch years ago, a rejection that still burned. Now Ivy was the ultimate insult, a nobody who'd stolen her spotlight. Marissa had teamed up with Gerald, feeding Clara doctored screenshots and whispers about Ivy's shady past. Clara, desperate to stay relevant, posted them without question, her TikTok racking up millions of views. Clara wasn't heartless, though. Sitting cross-legged on Marissa's couch, she chewed her lip, her phone buzzing with notifications. "You sure about this, Marissa?" she asked, her voice small. "What if Ivy's actually legit?" Marissa rolled her eyes. "Legit? She's a scam artist. Clara, you saw her at the will reading jeans and sneakers. She's playing the poor girl card to milk Logan's fortune. We're doing the world a favor." Clara nodded, but her stomach twisted. She'd grown up in a working-class suburb, her TikTok fame a fluke that came with constant pressure to stay hot. Hurting Ivy felt wrong, but Marissa's approval was her lifeline in this cutthroat world. At the hub, Ivy was putting on a brave face, but the strain showed in the tightness of her shoulders, the way her fingers fidgeted with a pen. Anna Brooks, the hub's gardener, tried to lighten the mood, cracking jokes as she swept the floor. "Yo, Ivy," Anna said, grinning. "If these rich folks keep hating, we'll just sick the kids on them. Those little monsters can take down anybody." Ivy chuckled, but it was hollow. Michael Reed, organizing books for the hub's library corner, watched her with quiet concern. "You don't have to do this alone." "Ivy," he said, pushing up his glasses, "we've got your back." "Thanks, Michael," Ivy said, her voice soft. "But this one's on me. They want to fight. I'll give them one." The next day, City Hall's courtyard was packed. Reporters' cameras and a crowd of curious Philadelphians filled the space, the iconic clock tower looming overhead. Ivy stood at a podium, her black blazer and jeans, a deliberate blend of professional and authentic. The fund's logo, a tree with roots spreading wide, glowed on a banner behind her. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding, and began. "I'm Ivy Walker," she said, her voice clear over the microphone. "Some of you know me as Logan Thornhill's daughter. Others think I'm a fraud." A murmur rippled through the crowd, but she pressed on. "I'm here to tell you what I'm about. This fund is for the kids who grow up like I did, hungry, doubted, but dreaming big. It's for North Philly, for South Philly, for every corner of this city that gets overlooked." The crowd listened, some nodding, others skeptical. Preston stood at the back, his hands in his pockets, his heart racing. He'd come to see her despite Gerald's orders, drawn by a pull he couldn't explain Ivy's passion. Her fire, It was magnetic. But then a reporter, a wiry guy with a smug grin, raised his hand. "Miss Walker," he said, his tone sharp, "can you address the allegations that you falsified your paternity? How do we know you're really Thornhill's daughter?" The question hit like a sucker punch. Cameras flashed, the crowd buzzing. Ivy's breath caught memories of childhood taunts. "You ain't nobody," flooding back. She gripped the podium, her knuckles whitening. The world seemed to shrink, the faces blurring into a sea of judgment. Preston took a step forward, his fists clenching. He wanted to shout to tell the guy to back off, but he froze. What could he say? He was part of this world, part of the problem. Ivy straightened, her eyes blazing. "I'm Ivy Walker," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "I'm Logan Thornhill's daughter, born to a woman he loved, raised in a city that taught me to fight. I don't need to prove my blood to anyone, my work, my heart. That's my proof. You want to question me? Fine, but don't question the kids who need this fund, 'cause they're the ones who matter." The courtyard fell silent, then erupted in applause from the North Philly folks who'd shown up to support her. Sarah clapped loudest, her eyes shining with pride. Anna whooped, and even Michael cracked a rare smile. Preston felt a surge of admiration, his throat tight. Ivy wasn't just holding her ground, she was rewriting the narrative. But the reporter wasn't done. What about the rumors of forged documents? He pressed his voice louder. "People are saying you're a con artist." The crowd's mood shifted, whispers spreading. Ivy's heart sank, but she refused to crumble. "Believe what you want," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "I'm here to build, not to beg for your approval." She stepped away from the podium, her head high, but inside she was shaking. The cameras followed her, the questions relentless. As she pushed through the crowd, Preston caught her eye, his expression unreadable. For a moment she thought he might say something, but he didn't. He just watched, and that silence hurt more than she expected. Later that night, Ivy sat on the hub's rooftop, a small oasis of potted plants and string lights Anna had set up. The city sprawled below its lights, a constellation of dreams and struggles. She hugged her knees, the article's words echoing in her mind. Sarah had told her to keep fighting, but tonight she felt alone. Across town, Preston stood in his penthouse, the skyline mocking him with its cold beauty. Gerald's ultimatum rang in his ears, but so did Ivy's voice at the press conference, fierce, unbroken. He'd been a player his whole life, coasting on charm and cash. But Ivy was different. She was real, and he was starting to realize he didn't want to lose her. He grabbed his phone, hesitating, then typed a message. "Hey, saw you at City Hall. You killed it. For what it's worth. I believe you." He hit send before he could overthink it. His heart pounding. Ivy's phone buzzed and she glanced at the screen. Preston's name made her pause. She didn't reply, but a small part of her, the part that remembered his clumsy help at the hub, wondered if he was worth a chance. The city hummed around her, and for the first time that day, she felt a flicker of hope. The North Philly night was alive with sound crickets chirping in the vacant lots, the distant thump of a car stereo, the occasional shout from a late-night basketball game. Inside the Walker Community Hub, the lights were low, casting long shadows across the cluttered office. Ivy Walker sat at a folding table, her laptop screen glowing with spreadsheets for her new education fund. Her tank top was smudged with dirt from an afternoon of hauling boxes, and her curls were escaping their ponytail, framing her face like a dark halo. At 26, she was used to late nights, but tonight the weight of the world pressed harder. The Philly Inquirer article and Clara's viral TikTok had turned her into a lightning rod, and the whispers of doubt were growing louder. Sarah Ellis bustled in from the back room, a thermos of coffee in one hand and a USB drive in the other. Her nurse's scrubs were swapped for a faded Eagles sweatshirt, her silver braids tucked under a cap. "All right, baby," she said, setting the thermos down with a thud. "You've been staring at that screen like it's gonna confess a crime. Time for a break and a bombshell." Ivy looked up, her brow furrowing. "Bombshell. Sarah, I'm drowning in grant proposals. Unless that thermos is full of miracles, I'm not sure I can handle more surprises." Sarah's eyes twinkled with mischief. "Oh, this ain't coffee. This is the kind of thing that flips the game." She slid the USB drive across the table. "Found this in a box of your mom's old stuff at my place. Logan left it for you years ago. Said to give it to you when the time was right." Ivy's heart skipped. Her father, Logan. Thornhill had always been a mystery, a tech genius who'd loved her mom fiercely, but kept Ivy a secret to protect her from his cutthroat world. She took the drive, her fingers trembling slightly, and plugged it into her laptop. The screen flickered and a video loaded. Logan's face appeared older than she remembered his salt and pepper hair, thinning his eyes, sharp but weary. He sat in a plain room, a single lamp casting shadows on the wall. Ivy Logan's voice rumbled deep and familiar. "If you're watching this, things have gotten complicated. I'm not dead, not yet anyway." He gave a dry chuckle, the kind that used to make her mom smile. "I had to step back, let the vultures think I was gone. I needed to see who'd fight for you, who'd try to tear you down. You're my daughter, my legacy, and they'll come for you. But you're stronger than they know. Trust, Sarah. Trust yourself. And don't let them break you." The video cut off, leaving Ivy staring at a blank screen, her breath caught in her throat. "He's alive," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Sarah. Where is he?" Sarah leaned back, her expression serious. "He's off the grid somewhere outside the city. Said he'd come back when you were ready to take the reins. But Ivy, this means the game's bigger than we thought. Those folks, Marissa, Gerald, they're not just talking trash. They're planning something." Ivy's mind raced, her father alive watching from the shadows. It was a lifeline, but also a burden. She'd been fighting to prove herself. But now the stakes were higher. Her father's trust, her legacy, the future of North Philly. She closed her laptop, her jaw set. "Then we fight smarter," she said. "No more playing defense." Across town in the heart of Center City, Preston Caldwell was having a very different kind of night. He stood on the rooftop of his penthouse, the Philly skyline sprawling before him like a glittering chessboard. A glass of bourbon dangled from his fingers untouched. At 28, he was used to winning deals, women power. But Ivy Walker was rewriting his playbook, and he was losing ground fast. His phone buzzed with a text from Gerald. "Meet me tomorrow. We're moving on." "Walker, don't screw this up." Preston's stomach twisted. Gerald's plan, digging up dirt on Ivy contesting the will, was gaining traction, and Marissa's smear campaign was the perfect fuel Preston had played along, at first thinking it was just business. But after seeing Ivy at City Hall, her voice ringing with defiance, he wasn't so sure. She wasn't a pawn. She was a queen, and he was starting to wonder which side he was on. The elevator dinged, and Anna Brooks stepped onto the rooftop. Her gardening overalls swapped for jeans and a bright yellow hoodie. Anna, who'd worked at Thornhill Manor before joining Ivy's team, had become an unlikely ally for Preston, mostly because she found his attempts to woo Ivy hilarious. "Yo, rich boy," she called, plopping into a lounge chair. "You look like someone stole your Lamborghini." "What's up?" Preston sighed, running a hand through his blonde hair. "Just life." "Anna, ever feel like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place?" Anna snorted, grabbing a soda from the cooler. "Welcome to North Philly, dude. That's every day. Spill it. What's got you moping?" He hesitated, then set the bourbon down. My uncle's got plans for Ivy, bad ones, and he wants me in on it. But I don't know if I can do it. Anna's eyes narrowed, but her tone stayed light. Let me guess. Gerald's got you on a leash, but you're catching feelings for our girl. Am I close? Preston's face flushed and he looked away, the city lights blurring. She's different. Okay, she's not like the people in my world. She's real, and I don't want to hurt her. Anna leaned forward, her grin fading. Then don't. Ivy's been through enough. You want to be the guy she trusts. Step up, 'cause if you're playing both sides, you're gonna crash and burn. Preston nodded, her words sinking in. He'd spent his life dodging hard choices, coasting on charm. But Ivy was worth more than that. He just didn't know how to break free. The next day, Ivy threw herself into action, organizing a community tree planting event to kick off her fund's first project. The lot behind the hub was transformed, tables piled with saplings, kids running with shovels, and volunteers blasting a playlist of Kendrick Lamar and Jill Scott. The air smelled of fresh dirt and possibility, a stark contrast to the city's concrete jungle. Ivy, in a green t-shirt and jeans, moved through the crowd, her energy infectious. She handed out gloves, demonstrated how to dig, and laughed when a kid sprayed her with a hose. Preston showed up unannounced, his usual designer threads swapped for a plain white tee and cargo shorts, a look so out of character it drew double takes. He carried a flat of saplings, his arms straining under the weight. Ivy spotted him and raised an eyebrow, wiping sweat from her brow. "What's this, millionaire?" she asked, her tone teasing but wary. "You trading the penthouse for a shovel?" Preston grinned, setting the saplings down with a grunt. "Figured I owed you after the apple disaster," he said. "Plus, I hear trees are the new bling." Ivy's lips twitched, but she didn't let him off easy. "Trees don't crash and burn like your last stunt. Grab a shovel and prove you're not just here for the photo op." The event was a chaotic symphony of laughter and dirt. Anna led a group of kids in a chant of "plant it, grow it," while Michael organized the saplings with his usual precision, shooting Preston suspicious glances. Sarah manned the snack table, slipping extra cookies to the kids and winking at Ivy whenever Preston got close. Preston, determined to impress, threw himself into the work, but his inexperience showed. He dug a hole too deep, nearly burying a sapling, and when he tried to carry a bag of mulch, it split open, showering him in dark, earthy dust. The kids howled and Anna doubled over, clutching her sides. "Yo, Preston, you're a walking compost pile," she cackled. Ivy jogged over her sneakers, crunching on the gravel. She handed him a water bottle, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "You're a mess." "Caldwell," she said, brushing a clump of mulch off his shoulder. Her fingers lingered, the touch light but electric, and for a moment their eyes locked. The noise of the event faded, leaving just the two of them, the sun warm on their skin, the air thick with possibility. "Thanks," Preston said, his voice softer, his usual bravado gone. "For, not laughing too hard." Ivy's smile was small but genuine. "Don't get used to it," she said, stepping back. "You've got a lot of mulch to clean up." As they worked side by side, planting a row of maples, Preston felt a shift. Ivy wasn't just a challenge. She was someone he wanted to know, to understand. Her laughter, her strength, the way she made every kid feel seen. It was a world he'd never known, and he was hooked. But the moment was shattered when Michael approached his arms, crossed Ivy. "Can we talk?" he said, his voice tight. "Alone." Preston bristled, but Ivy nodded, leading Michael to a quiet corner. "What's up?" she asked, her tone gentle. Michael adjusted his glasses, his jaw tight. "I don't trust him." "Ivy, Preston's one of them. The people tearing you down. I saw him talking to Marissa at City Hall. What if he's playing you?" Ivy's stomach dropped. She glanced at Preston, who was helping a kid plant a tree, his face lit with a rare, unguarded smile. He's trying. Michael, she said, but doubt crept into her voice. I don't know what his deal is, but I can handle him. Michael's eyes softened, a flicker of something deeper affection, maybe more. Just be careful, okay? You deserve better than a guy like that. Ivy nodded, but her mind was spinning. She'd let Preston in just a little, and now she wasn't sure if it was a mistake. Later that evening, Preston was back at the hub helping clean up. The lot was quiet now, the kids gone, the saplings standing proud in their new homes. He was sweeping dirt off the concrete when he overheard a conversation that stopped him cold. Marissa and Gerald standing near a parked car, their voices low but clear. We've got the documents, Gerald was saying, his tone icy. Forged, but they'll hold up in court. Once we file, Walker's done. Marissa's laugh was sharp. Good. That TikTok's already got 10 million views. She's crumbling. Gerald, by next week she'll be begging to settle. Preston's blood ran cold. He gripped the broom, his knuckles white. They were planning to destroy Ivy, and he'd been complicit, even if just by staying silent. He had to warn her, had to make this right. He found Ivy inside stacking chairs. Ivy, he said, his voice urgent. We need to talk. It's about Marissa and my uncle. There, Ivy cut him off, her eyes flashing. Save it, Preston, she said, her voice cold. Michael told me you were cozy with Marissa at City Hall. You here to spy on me? Play me for Gerald. Preston's heart sank. No, that's not. Look, I was an idiot. Okay, I didn't know what they were planning, but I'm telling you now, they've got fake documents. They're gonna stop. Ivy snapped, stepping closer, her voice low and fierce. I trusted you today, let you in my world, and now I hear you're tied up with the people trying to ruin me. Get out, Preston. I don't need your kind of help. Preston opened his mouth, but the hurt in her eyes silenced him. He'd messed up bad, Ivy. Please, he said, his voice breaking. I'm trying to fix this. Then start by leaving, she said, turning away. I've got enough fights without adding you to the list. Preston stood there, the broom still in his hand as Ivy walked back to her work. Outside, a light rain began to fall, pattering against the hub's windows. He stepped into the night, the city's pulse mocking him with its relentless beat. He'd lost her trust, maybe for good, but he wasn't done fighting. Not for Ivy, not for the man he wanted to be. The Philadelphia sky was a bruised shade of gray, heavy with the promise of a storm. North Philly's streets were quieter than usual. The usual buzz of basketball games and corner store chatter muted by the gathering clouds inside the Walker Community Hub. Ivy. Walker sat on a folding chair, her elbows on her knees, her face buried in her hands. The glow of her laptop screen cast harsh shadows across the room, illuminating a paused video that had turned her world upside down. The title on Clara Simmons's TikTok read Ivy Walker's Confession, the Truth About Thornhill's Heir. The video, doctored to perfection, showed Ivy, her face, her voice, but not her words, saying, I faked the DNA test. Logan was just a mark. It had 10 million views, and counting, each comment a dagger. Fraud, liar, thief. At 26, Ivy was no stranger to hardship. Growing up in North Philly, she dodged bullies, stretched food stamps to feed her mom, and clawed her way through college on scholarships. But this was a public execution. The video had sparked an investigation into her fund, frozen her accounts, and turned even her staunchest supporters wary. The kids at the hub still hugged her, but their parents whispered. The Philly Inquirer ran a follow-up. Thornhill heir faces fraud allegations. Marissa Reed and Gerald Hayes had played their hand, and they were winning. Sarah Ellis stood by the window, her arms crossed, her silver braids glinting under the fluorescent lights. This is Bull Ivy, she said, her voice thick with anger. "That video's fake as a $3 bill. We'll fight it, you hear me?" Ivy lifted her head, her dark brown eyes red-rimmed but fierce. "I know it's fake, Sarah," she said, her Philly accent sharp. "But who's gonna believe me? They've got the whole city eating out of their hands." Anna Brooks, sweeping dirt from the day's tree planting, paused, her broom still in hand. "Yo, we got you," she said, her usual grin replaced by a determined nod. "Those rich folks can't keep this up forever. They'll slip and we'll be ready." Michael Reed, organizing books in the corner, looked up, his glasses slipping down his nose. "Ivy, I've been digging online," he said, his voice quiet but intense. "There's chatter on some forums, hackers saying Marissa paid for the deepfake. If we can trace it, we can prove it's a lie." Ivy nodded, grateful for her crew, but the weight in her chest didn't lift. She'd learned her father, Logan Thornhill, was alive, hiding somewhere to protect her. She'd poured her heart into the fund into North Philly, and now it was all crumbling. She stood pacing the linoleum floor, her Converse squeaking. "We keep pushing," she said more to herself than anyone. "They want me to break. They'll have to try harder." Across town in his Center City penthouse, Preston. Caldwell stared at his reflection in a floor-to-ceiling window, the city's lights blurring into streaks of color. His blonde hair was disheveled, his tie loosened, a half-empty coffee mug on the table. At 28, he'd built a tech empire, but tonight he felt like a kid caught in a storm. Gerald's latest text burned in his mind. "File the papers tomorrow. Walker's done." The forged documents, fake emails, doctored bank records were ready to bury Ivy in court. Marissa's video had softened the ground, and Gerald was ready to strike. Preston's phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from Clara's TikTok. He watched the video, his stomach churning as Ivy's manipulated voice echoed. He knew it was fake. Gerald had bragged about the hacker they'd hired, but what could he do? Going against Gerald meant risking his company, his reputation, everything he'd built. Yet every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ivy at the tree planting, her smile bright against the dirt-smudged chaos, her hand brushing his shoulder. She was real, and he was falling for her hard. He grabbed his jacket, ignoring the rain starting to patter against the windows. He had to see her, had to try to make this right, even if she hated him. As he stepped into the elevator, his mother's voice echoed from years ago before cancer took her. "Be the man who does what's right, Preston. Not what's easy." For the first time, he wanted to be that man. The storm hit North Philly like a freight train, thunder rumbling and rain lashing the streets. Ivy was locking up the hub, her denim jacket soaked through when Preston's Jeep pulled up its headlights, cutting through the downpour. He jumped out, his white t-shirt clinging to his frame, his hair plastered to his forehead. "Ivy!" he shouted, jogging toward her. "We need to talk." Ivy's eyes narrowed, her heart racing despite her anger. "I told you to stay away, Preston," she said, her voice barely audible over the rain. "You've got nothing I want to hear." "Please," he said, stepping closer, water streaming down his face. "I know about the video. It's fake. Marissa and Gerald set it up. I can help you fight it." Ivy laughed, a bitter sound. "Help? Like you helped at City Hall, standing there while they tore me apart, or when you were buddy-buddy with Marissa. Save it." "Caldwell." Preston flinched, but he didn't back down. "I was wrong. Okay, I was a coward. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving until you listen." The rain intensified, and a crack of lightning lit the sky. Ivy grabbed his arm, pulling him toward a small storage shed behind the hub. "Fine," she snapped, fumbling with the lock. "But only 'cause I don't want you getting struck by lightning on my property." Inside the shed was cramped, smelling of damp wood and old paint cans. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting soft shadows. Ivy's jacket dripped onto the floor. her tank top clinging to her athletic frame, accentuating the strength in her shoulders, the curve of her waist. Preston's shirt was nearly transparent, his chest rising and falling with each breath. The air was thick, charged with more than just the storm outside, Ivy. Preston started, his voice low. I didn't know how deep this went. Gerald's got fake documents, emails, bank records to make it look like you scammed Logan. They're filing tomorrow, but I'm not with them. Not anymore. Ivy crossed her arms, her eyes blazing. Why should I believe you? You're one of them, Preston. The suits, the money, the games. You think you can waltz in here, play hero, and I'll fall at your feet. Preston stepped closer, his green eyes intense. I'm not playing Ivy. I've been a jerk. Yeah, but you're the first person who's made me want to be better. I see you how you fight for these kids, how you don't back down. I'm in all the way, if you'll let me. The words hung between them, raw and unguarded. Ivy's breath hitched her defenses, wavering. The shed felt smaller, the space between them shrinking. Preston reached out his fingers, brushing her arm, tentative, like he was afraid she'd vanish. Ivy, he whispered. I'm sorry. For everything. Her eyes searched his, looking for a lie, but all she saw was sincerity, and something deeper, something that mirrored the ache in her chest. The rain roared outside, but inside it was just them. She stepped closer, her voice barely a whisper. You hurt me, Preston. Don't do it again. He nodded, his hand sliding to her waist, the touch warm through her wet shirt. I won't, he said, his voice rough. Their faces were inches apart, the air electric. Ivy's heart pounded, her resolve crumbling under the weight of his gaze. She leaned in, or maybe he did, and their lips met a fierce, hungry kiss that tasted of rain and regret. His hands cupped her face, hers gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. The world fell away, the storm, the lies, the pain, leaving only the heat of their bodies, the rhythm of their breaths. But Ivy pulled back her chest, heaving her eyes wide. This doesn't fix anything, she said, her voice shaky but firm. A kiss isn't proof. Preston, show me you mean it. He nodded, his forehead resting against hers for a moment. I will, he said, his voice a promise, I swear. They stepped back, the spell broken, but the connection undeniable. Ivy opened the shed door, the rain a cold slap against her skin. Go, she said, softer now. We'll talk tomorrow. Preston hesitated, then nodded, stepping into the storm. As he drove away, Ivy leaned against the shed, her heart racing. She didn't know if she could trust him, but for the first time she wanted to try. The next morning the hub was a hive of activity volunteers rallying to prepare for a second press conference. Ivy had decided to fight back, to call out the lies and demand transparency. But the mood was grim. Donors were pulling out, and the investigation was tightening its grip. Sarah, Anna, and Michael worked tirelessly, but Ivy felt the walls closing in. Across town, Preston sat in Gerald's office, the forged documents spread across the desk. Gerald's voice was cold. Sign here, he said, sliding a pen toward Preston. We file today, and Walker's out by next week. Preston stared at the papers, his mother's words echoing. Do what's right. He thought of Ivy's kiss, her strength, the kids at the hub. No, he said, standing. I'm done, Gerald. You want to play dirty? Do it without me. Gerald's face darkened. You're throwing away everything, boy. Your company, your future. Maybe, Preston said, his jaw tight. But I'm not throwing away her. He walked out, his heart pounding, knowing he'd just burned a bridge he couldn't rebuild. He had to find Ivy, had to warn her before it was too late. The press conference at City Hall was a circus. Reporters packed the courtyard, cameras flashing the crowd, a mix of supporters and skeptics. Ivy stood at the podium, her black blazer crisp, her jeans a defiant nod to her roots. She gripped the microphone, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "I'm here to set the record straight," she began. "The video is a lie. I'm Logan Thornhill's daughter, and I'm not going anywhere." The crowd murmured some cheering, others heckling. A man shouted, "You don't belong here." The words hit like a punch, and Ivy faltered, her hands trembling. The cameras zoomed in, hungry for her collapse. But then Clara Simmons stepped forward, her face pale, her phone clutched in her hand. The TikTok star, usually all swagger, looked small, vulnerable. "Wait," she said, her voice shaking. "I need to say something." The crowd hushed, stunned. Clara took a deep breath, tears in her eyes. "The video's fake. I helped Marissa spread it, but I didn't know how far it'd go. Ivy, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve this." The courtyard erupted, gasps and shouts blending with the click of cameras. Ivy stared at Clara, her heart racing. It wasn't absolution, but it was a lifeline. She nodded, her voice soft but firm. "Thank you, Clara. That took guts." Preston, arriving just in time, pushed through the crowd, his eyes locked on Ivy. He'd defied Gerald, risked everything, and now seeing her stand tall, he knew it was worth it. The rain started again, a light drizzle, and Ivy's gaze found his, a flicker of hope in her eyes. The Philadelphia skyline sparkled under a clear October night, the Schuylkill River reflecting the city's lights like a canvas of stars. Inside the Bellevue Hotel's grand ballroom in Center City, the air buzzed with anticipation. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over tables draped in white linen, the scent of roasted lamb and fresh pretzels, a Philly staple mingling with the clink of champagne flutes. The gala was the culmination of Ivy Walker's education fund, a $50 million initiative to rebuild schools and community centers across the city. But tonight, it was more than a fundraiser. It was a reckoning. Ivy stood near the stage, her black dress hugging her athletic frame, its simple elegance, a stark contrast to the sequined gowns around her. Her curls were loose, framing her face, and her dark brown eyes shone with a mix of nerves and resolve. At 26, she'd faced a city's worth of doubt, fake videos, vicious headlines, and a smear campaign led by Marissa Reed and Gerald Hayes. Clara Simmons's confession at the press conference had turned the tide, but the wounds were fresh and the stakes were higher than ever. Sarah Ellis, in a teal dress that made her silver braids pop, squeezed Ivy's arm. "You got this, baby," she said, her voice warm but firm. "Show 'em what North Philly's made of." Anna Brooks, decked out in a bright yellow jumpsuit, grinned from the snack table, sneaking a pretzel. "Yo, Ivy, you're about to slay," she called, dodging a playful swat from Sarah. "And if anybody tries drama, I'm ready to throw hands." Michael Reed, adjusting his tie, shot Anna a look. "Let's keep it chill, Anna," he said, but his smile was soft. He'd been Ivy's rock through the chaos, though his feelings for her, unspoken but clear, hung heavy in his glances. "Ivy, you're ready. Just be you." Ivy nodded, her heart pounding. The gala was her chance to reclaim her narrative, to prove she was more than a headline. But the weight of her father's secret, Logan Thornhill alive and watching from the shadows, pressed on her. She hadn't heard from him since the video, but Sarah had promised he'd show when the time was right. Tonight, she hoped, was that time. Across the room, Preston Caldwell stood by a window, his navy suit tailored to perfection, but his usual swagger subdued. At 28, he'd defied his Uncle Gerald, refusing to sign the forged documents that would have ruined Ivy. The cost was steep. Gerald had cut him off, threatening to tank his startup. But Preston felt lighter than he had in years. He watched Ivy, her poise and strength drawing every eye in the room. He'd fallen for her, not just her fire, but her heart. And tonight, He'd do whatever it took to prove it. The crowd hushed as Ivy stepped onto the stage, the spotlight catching the sheen of her skin, the resolve in her eyes. She gripped the microphone, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "Good evening, Philly." She began, her Philly accent warm and unapologetic. "I'm Ivy Walker, and I'm here because of a dream not mine but my father's." Logan Thornhill believed in this city and its kids and its heart. "Tonight we're launching a fund to rebuild our schools, our communities, because every kid deserves a shot." The room applauded the North Philly contingent, hub volunteers, local families cheering loudest. But Marissa Reed, in a glittering silver gown, stood near the back, her arms crossed her lips, a tight line. She'd lost ground with Clara's betrayal, but she wasn't done. Gerald beside her whispered something, his eyes cold. They had one last card to play. As Ivy spoke, detailing plans for new libraries and after-school programs, the ballroom doors swung open. A murmur rippled through the crowd, heads turning. Logan Thornhill stepped inside his presence, commanding, despite his simple gray suit. At 55, his salt and pepper hair was thinning, but his eyes, sharp, piercing, were unmistakable. The room fell silent, gasps punctuating the air. Logan was supposed to be dead, a ghost in a plane crash. Yet here he was, alive and unyielding. Ivy froze, her breath catching Dad. She whispered the microphone, amplifying the word. The crowd erupted, cameras flashing, reporters scrambling. Logan climbed the stage, his gait steady, and stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "Ladies and gentlemen," Logan said, his voice deep and resonant. "I'm Logan Thornhill, and I'm very much alive." The room buzzed, but he raised a hand, silencing it. "I stepped back to protect my daughter, to see who'd stand with her and who'd try to tear her down. Ivy is my heir, my heart, and she's proven she's more than capable of carrying this legacy." He turned to Ivy, his eyes softening. "I'm proud of you," he said, low enough for only her to hear. Ivy's throat tightened, tears prickling. She nodded, unable to speak, the weight of his trust grounding her. Logan faced the crowd again, his voice hardening. "There are those who've tried to destroy her, spreading lies, forging documents. Tonight that ends." He gestured to a screen behind him, and a video played. Gerald and Marissa caught on a hidden camera discussing the fake documents and deepfake video. The evidence was damning, their voices clear. The crowd gasped, Marissa's face paling as she clutched Gerald's arm. "These actions are not just unethical. They're illegal," Logan said. "My legal team has already filed charges. Gerald Hayes and Marissa Reed will face the consequences." The room exploded, shouts and applause blending. Marissa tried to slip toward the exit, but security blocked her path. Gerald stood frozen, his empire crumbling. Clara, standing near the front, wiped tears from her eyes, her earlier confession now vindicated. She caught Ivy's gaze and mouthed, "I'm sorry." Ivy nodded, a silent acknowledgement of her courage. Preston, watching from the sidelines, felt a surge of relief. He'd burned his bridges with Gerald, but seeing Ivy vindicated, seeing Logan stand by her, made it worth it. He clapped louder than anyone, his eyes locked on her. Ivy took the microphone again, her voice steady now, infused with a fire that silenced the room. "I grew up in North Philly," she said, "where folks told me I'd never be anything, but I had a mom who sang me to sleep, a dad who believed in me, and a city that taught me to fight. This fund isn't about me. It's about the kids who need a chance, the communities that deserve to thrive. I'm here, I'm standing, and I'm not going anywhere." The crowd roared, a wave of applause that shook the ballroom. Sarah whooped, Anna danced in place, and Michael clapped, his eyes shining with pride. Preston stepped forward, his heart full, knowing he'd made the right choice. As the gala continued, the mood shifted to celebration. A local hip-hop crew took the stage, their beats filling the room with energy. Ivy stepped off the stage, her dress swishing, and found Preston waiting. He looked different, humbled, grounded, his green eyes soft, but intense. "Hey," he said, his voice low. "You were incredible up there. I'm sorry for everything. I should have stood up sooner." Ivy studied him, her heart torn. The kiss in the shed still lingered, a spark she couldn't ignore. "You're here now," she said, her tone cautious but warm. "That's a start. But you've got a lot to prove, Caldwell." He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I know I'm in it, Ivy, all the way." She hesitated, then extended her hand. "Deal?" she said, her smile breaking through. He took it, his grip firm, and for a moment they stood there, the music pulsing around them, the future unwritten, but bright. The gala turned into a party, Philly style. Anna led a group of kids in a dance-off, her yellow jumpsuit, a blur. Sarah pulled Logan onto the dance floor, teasing him about his old man moves. Michael watched Ivy and Preston, his heart aching but accepting he'd always be her friend, even if not more. Clara, lingering at the edges, was approached by a local reporter offering her a chance to tell her story, a small step toward redemption. As the night wound down, Preston found Ivy by a window, the city lights framing her like a portrait. "So," he said, leaning against the wall, "I did something. Don't hate me." Ivy raised an eyebrow. "What now, millionaire?" He pulled out his phone, showing a press release. "I sold half my company's shares," he said. "The money's going to a new library in North Philly, named after your mom, I figured. It's what you'd want." Ivy's breath caught her eyes widening. "Preston, that's—" "You didn't have to do that, I wanted to," he said, his voice earnest. "You showed me what matters, Ivy. Not money, not power, the real stuff." She smiled, a real unguarded smile, and stepped closer. "You're still a mess," she said, her voice soft. "But you're my mess." He grinned, and when she leaned in, he met her halfway, their lips brushing in a gentle, hopeful kiss. The city hummed outside, a witness to their new beginning. Weeks later, the North Philly lot, where they'd planted trees, was now a budding park, saplings thriving under Anna's care. Ivy and Preston stood side by side, watching kids play on a new basketball court funded by the Thornhill estate. Preston, in a t-shirt and jeans, was attempting to grill cheesesteaks for the community picnic, but the grill flared, sending him scrambling. "Whoa, whoa!" he yelped, waving a spatula. "This thing's possessed." Ivy laughed, grabbing a fire extinguisher. "You're hopeless. Caldwell," she said, putting out the flames. "Stick to tech, not cooking." He wiped soot from his face, grinning. "Hey, I'm trying. Gotta earn my keep, right?" She nudged him, her smile bright. "You're getting there, Logan." Now living quietly in a suburb, watched from a bench, a rare smile on his face. He'd handed the reins to Ivy, trusting her to carry his legacy. Sarah joined him, handing him a soda. "She's something, ain't she?" Sarah said, nodding at Ivy. "She's everything," Logan said, his voice thick with pride. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the park, Ivy and Preston joined the kids for a game of tag, their laughter echoing. The city pulsed around them, a tapestry of struggle and hope. Ivy had faced the worst lies, betrayal, doubt, and come out stronger. Preston had shed his arrogance, finding purpose in her world. Together, they were building something new, not just for themselves, but for Philly, but for... The lesson was simple but profound. Kindness outshines greed, and love, real, messy, hard-won love, can change everything. Ivy glanced at Preston, his face lit with joy as he chased a kid and knew they'd figure it out. One step, one laugh, one cheesesteak at a time. What a ride Ivy and Preston have fought through the storm, and Philly's shining brighter because of it. What's your favorite moment? Logan's epic return, Clara's redemption, or that sweet kiss? Drop a comment and let us know. If this story warmed your heart, hit that subscribe button and share it with your crew. Here's to more Philly love stories. Stay tuned for what's next.